Hello, Clay. Welcome to our podcast episode for the Year of Hell. We both put on our finest plaid that only the people on YouTube...
Oh, yeah, we did. Look at that.
Only the people on YouTube are going to recognize. But here we are, all plaided up for
like
this
alternate versions of the same character today.
I know. It might cause people's computer monitors to start overheating with the amount of color that we're pushing across the bandwidth here. Yeah. So we're going to get into Year of Hell, Clay, which before I give all the details about it, I'm just going to say this was rated in 2016. The UK film magazine Empire ranked this the 25th best episode of Star Trek TV of all time.
Okay, full stop, Star Trek.
Full stop. Sci-Fi ranked Year of Hell as the 6th best time travel plot in Star Trek in 2016. Also in 2016, The Hollywood Reporter rated Year of Hell the 25th best episode of Star Trek overall, but the number one best episode of Voyager overall. In 2016, IGN ranked Year of Hell the 16th best episode of Star Trek overall. Den of Geek included this episode, Scorpion and Message in a Bottle as the ones to watch, and said that...
Wrong podcast, Wes.
Kurtwood Smith.
That's the Patreon show.
Was
about
the
police.
Second best guest star in Voyager history. And then finally in 2017, Vulture listed this as the best Star Trek Voyager episode. So...
If Kurtwood Smith is the second best guest star, I'm curious to see who's the first.
Who's going to be first? Could be The Rock.
Because he is pretty good in this.
This is Year of Hell. It's the 8th and 9th episodes of the 4th season of Star Trek Voyager. We're going to be covering both of them in one podcast. The first one came out on the 5th of November, 1997. It is 2 of 3 in the Year of Hell arc, and the next one will be 3 of 3, I'd assume. Written by Brandon Braga and Joe Menosky, directed by Alan Croker, and universe date 51268.4, which is March 16th to May 28th, 2374. In the first part, obsessed with restoring the Krenim Imperium, no matter the cost, a Krenim military temporal scientist creates changes in history that all but destroy Voyager. The second one came out on the 12th of November when we were dancing in December. It is the 3rd of 3 in the Year of Hell, written by Brandon Braga and Joe Menosky yet again, but directed by Mike Vehar. This one is 51425.4, which is July 27th to November 29th and March 16th, 2374. In this one, the second part, with Voyager almost destroyed, Captain Janeway risks everything to rescue Paris and Chakotay and stop Annorax from continuing to tamper with the timeline. So here we are. High praise for this episode with all those publications and magazines and blogs and whatever I said earlier on. Frequently regarded as one of Voyager's best. So I'm interested what you have to say about the Year of Hell. You knew this was coming. They talked about it last season. They said there's a Year of Hell. It's coming.
Yes.
And here it is.
I thought it was good. I think Kurtwood Smith adds at least a point to this episode, to these two episodes. I think he's fantastic. It's a very what's the word, reserved performance from him, but I think it's very impactful. And the character that he's playing is really interesting. He reminded me of Thanos a bit. Mm-hmm. He had kind of like Thanos energy to him, but a little bit less maniacal. I think this is an example of what Voyager does well, but it doesn't get out of the shadow of other shows to do it, because it very much has a Yesterday's Enterprise kind of feel to it. I wish I had said this previously, I think, and this has kind of confirmed it, where I wish this was like the whole season. Yep. I wish they had done, well, let me rephrase that. I wish this Year of Hell concept was the whole season, but I don't think that you could end the season by just restarting everything. I think it would just have to be, this is
a bad year.
This year.
Yeah, a bad year. Yeah.
Ultimately, I thought it was really good. I liked the Chakotay and Paris stuff, but they hustle through it really quick. And I was a little bit disappointed. I think I was a little disappointed in the ending, because I feel like if this was Deep Space Nine, this would have ended with Chakotay using the machine to fix things and then never telling anybody he used the machine to fix things. You know, like it feels like just ramming the ship into the other ship to blow it up and then resetting everything is just like too easy for this story that they're telling.
Yeah.
And, it's one of those things where we can probably get into this at length, but like yesterday's Enterprise ends with the sacrifice of Tasha Yar, right?
Yep.
She's back from the dead and then has to be sacrificed in order to fix things. Voyager sacrifices nothing there's no, like, it's a Hail Mary at the end, sure, but like I think that's what for me stops it from being like a 5 is that ultimately nothing has changed and they don't even remember it happened. So it's like, I don't know.
That's the strangest part to me, is that no one remembers any of this. I feel like there could have been a way around that, but they weren't interested in doing that no one remembers.
Like, honestly, they should have kept Kess around. This would have been a great way to kill off Kess or something.
Yeah.
I don't know how you do it, but at least it would make things feel a little bit more critical.
I am unsure what to think about Year of Hell. I think I strongly disagree with everyone who says that this is one of the greatest Star Trek episodes. Like, I
don't know if I would go so.
I wouldn't even say top 25. Like that. This is nowhere near top 25 from the franchise. I don't think.
That honestly, I'm sorry. I'll stop interrupting you.
No, that's fine.
That feels like we need to put one from every season in the top.
Yeah, we have to include the Voyager.
Not that this is bad, but I just,
I thought this was fine, sort of. Like I guess I haven't seen this one in forever, I don't think. And coming into it, I was like, all right, I know this one is very hyped as one of the best Voyager episodes. And it's like, I remember Kurtwood Smith being really good. I'm sure this is going to be like invigorating and sort of like involved in a way. Like it has to have a sort of grandiosity to it because everyone talks about it in those terms. I come away from this one thinking it's kind of a strange letdown in a lot of different ways. It's like it has like a whole bunch of threads that are just feel like they aren't anywhere where they need to be. Really, like that. There's just a lot. Like the ending is the most obvious that everyone points to and goes like, it's kind of weird that it's a reset button and it like resets everything and none of this matters. And goes, yeah, that's true. That's true. The thing that also is kind of weird about it is that this is just another example. The time temporal weapon is only time based in a very strange, weird way that causes it to constantly have to be used over and over again. Otherwise, it's just a weapon of mass destruction. It just destroys planets, basically. Like it wipes out species, but there's no you entering the timeline or anything like that. It just does things where like he'll use it and then he'll say it didn't work perfectly that time, and you go, oh, okay. And he's like, I have to use it again because I need this to work perfectly this time.
Well, but it does. I mean, isn't the whole thing that they use the weapon to eradicate that entire species, which then brings the Voyager into that separate timeline?
It does, but it's not a time travel story in the sense that you're a part of the changing timeline and you see different things. All that's happening is that he's wiping out a species. It's not giving them the result that he wants. So it's altering the timeline, but it's not really doing it in a way that feels different in the way that yesterday's Enterprise makes you know that you're in like an alternate weird world, right?
Oh,
because like,
yeah, okay.
So the example is like when they first run into the Krenim, it's a weak little ship. When he changes the timeline, it becomes this warship that can destroy them, right?
Right.
And it's not really that you understand that that's happening, but it's not this visceral change where you see like everything is dark now and we're at war with the Klingons and stuff. It's not this like, oh, something has gone horribly wrong. It's really just that the weapon destroys planets without destroying the planet. It kills everybody on it. It's basically the Death Star. Like if you shoot your planet, your species is dead and they get wiped out of the timeline and they disappear from everywhere, apparently. Mm-hmm. But the whole mechanism of it is just, it's done for time travel purposes or timeline purposes because it has to give Annorax a reason to continue wanting to use it and continue wanting to alter the timeline with it.
Sure.
So it's weird to me that it's a time travel story, but it almost feels like the time aspect is like totally irrelevant to the story. It's not really key to anything. And
I wouldn't disagree with that.
I think it's kind of novel, and it's neat that that's the way that it goes, and it's kind of a neat weapon. But I think when you sit down and you think about it, I was just thinking it's kind of strange that this is a time travel weapon at all. Like it's a weird. It's a very unique way to use it, and it's not at all what you're kind of expecting. But at the end of the day, he really just has a giant weapon ship. That's what it is. They even call it a weapon ship.
Sure, but it's a time travel weapon. If it wasn't a time travel weapon, then he would have no reason to use it, because the whole reason he's using it is to try to bring his family back.
Right. And I think that comes into the point of if he was just destroying planets with it. I like the Annorax story in his character story is good. It's a very, for something that's dealing with time, it has really, his struggle has almost nothing to do with time at all. It has no like memory. It doesn't even have DS9's emissary thing where like memory is time travel. Like him trying to get back to this thing is a better analogy into the DS9 emissary than it is of like, my wife was on one of the failed things. I need to get that planet back, so I'm just going to shoot shit until that actually happens for me.
The one thing that did strike me as strange was the first time they use it and they wipe that whole planet away or whatever.
Yeah.
He says,
in the cold open, you mean? Or
I think so.
Yeah. They do the first test, and it's before you see Voyager, yeah.
And afterwards he says, what are the chrono whatever? And he's like, well, this place is fine. All these people are back. And he's like, what about that one, the place where my family is? And they said, no, because in this timeline we never made it out that far. And he's like, we have to do it again. And I was like, wait, isn't that technically a good thing? Like they never went there. So doesn't that mean that they could theoretically be alive in this timeline? Why does it have to be that? I think it depends on how much you want to go cross-eyed thinking about this stuff, because theoretically the fact that they didn't make it out to that planet or outpost or whatever doesn't mean that his family doesn't now exist again. He's got no way of knowing, or chooses not to check. He's just trying to get back to that specific. It's strange because the way that he talks to Chakotay about time is, first of all, very pretentious.
Time has moods.
But also, I feel like what he claims to understand about time is not actually what he is shown to understand about time, for that exact reason, because he keeps trying to get back to a very specific point or a very specific outcome.
Yeah.
But he's not at all considering alternate versions where his family might be alive, like there's
sure.
So it is kind of a weird thing. It would kind of be better if they just changed that line or something to just be like, it didn't work or whatever. But because there's another time travel thing that I have a question about, which was the first of these time travel things to make me go, I'm just not even gonna.
Are you talking about in this specific episode?
In this specific episode. Just in general. I have a lot of time travel questions.
Before you say the time travel thing.
Yeah.
The reason that I guess that I have my point is because I think the only way to approach this episode is it doesn't even have the algebra of time travel baked into it, because there's not really a time travel aspect to this. It's like that's why it's strange to me. It's more like it's a weapon that can do this fairy tale thing that like you never exist if this weapon gets fired at you and you like no one remembers you never had any impact on anything, which is kind of novel. But I would like it a lot more if Annorax was somehow thematically relevant to what he's talking about with time. I don't feel that they do a great job of connecting time travel or whatever he's doing to the sort of like, because what's his struggle? His struggle is to basically get back to a point that he can't get back to anymore, right? And like, and it's, which is which is okay. I guess I don't feel that the Annorax character ever really realizes that, and it comes down to the very end where he gets sort of a happy ending for no particularly good reason that I can understand. Like he learns his lesson by the end of it, and I just wonder about his journey.
He does say it out loud, doesn't he? That he can't. He's like, I can't get back to this one moment, no matter how hard I try. I don't know if he. But he never really.
He claims he can anyway. Like, or he's trying to at that point.
Sure,
because otherwise he would stop doing it.
Right, but the scene with Chakotay, I think sums up why I don't think the actual mechanics of the time travel are really that important, or the timeline shifting, because as Chakotay says, you know, I don't remember what the exact line is, but every time he tries to pull a thread, it makes four other ones. Whatever the sweater
the tapestry unravels.
Yeah, exactly. And like that's the point, right? It's not really about time travel mechanics or anything like that. It's just a device to tell this story in a science fiction kind of way. And the ending is interesting because I'm not really sure what to take from it. Because ultimately the ending is a happy. What the ending is saying is that none of this would have happened if he didn't build the weapon.
Right.
And that's kind of it. And it's like, well, yeah.
Which is true. Yeah.
It's true. It's also true. Like, cool. All right. You know?
Yeah. Well, but I had the problem with him because from my understanding of what they do, none of them learn anything from this journey. So Annorax deciding to listen to his wife that time doesn't make much sense because he hasn't come out of this experience going like, I need to fix all the things that I fucked up previously. He, for some reason, just in this reset, decides not to work on the weapon anymore or for that day or whatever.
Or for another 10 minutes or
whatever it takes to talk to his wife. And I feel that's not the ending I would have thought like reasonable for him. I guess I don't know. Mm-hmm. I guess for me it all just comes down to Annorax. I feel that on broad strokes, Annorax is a great performance that's somewhat underwritten a little bit. Like that the clarity of his desires and everything like that makes sense. I just don't feel, and maybe this is the fault of other characters more than it is Annorax, I don't feel that he ever gets sufficiently pushed back against in an interesting way. Like he's not, you know, this is another weakness I'll throw to you by quickly saying, like, I find it very bizarre that Chakotay sort of buys into his philosophy so quickly. I thought that was strange, and I think a lot of the character work in this episode is strange. There might be a reason for that, but that's the kind of thing I feel that the show is pushing us to give Annorax some kind of people who agree with him and people who don't, but it never effectively wrangles with him. Like Janeway hardly ever speaks to Annorax, which is another decision that they made, which is kind of startling. But I feel that he's a character who, it was a great performance, somewhat underwritten, and probably needed better counterpoints to make him truly be like one of the top villains of Star Trek, I think.
Yeah, the Chakotay stuff is interesting because in theory I like all that stuff. But it all happens so fast where Chakotay goes from 0 to, well, yeah, all of this makes perfect sense to me. Let's start fucking around and see what happens.
Let's start calculating, yeah.
And then they have that one scene with him in Paris, which on the surface conceptually is good. But at that point, Chakotay's all in very quickly.
Yeah.
And then Paris is like, although I guess technically we don't know how much time has passed, but.
Well, that's the other, like, you continue with your thought, but like after you're done with your thought, is two-parter enough for this story that they're trying to tell? You know what I mean? Like if Chakotay was given 6 episodes, does this make more sense?
Yeah. I don't know if you need 6. I just think that you need a stronger motivation for Chakotay to consider what this guy's doing. Like, I think there would need to have been something that happened in part 1 or, something that is alluded to have happened in part 1 that you can call back to as this is the reason Chakotay is like, all right, maybe there's some validity to all this.
Yeah.
But he turns so quickly, and then Paris comes in, and Paris has been playing Battleship or whatever with that other guy, with the guy who I thought was the Liberty Bibberty guy, because he has that kind of weird kind of voice that the Liberty Bibberty guy has for Liberty Mutual Insurance.
I thought I knew this guy, and I looked him up, and I don't know him, but he must just have one of those faces. So.
But he comes back, and he's like, yeah, everybody on this ship kind of thinks this guy's nuts. Yeah. And you don't get that sense at any point.
No, you don't.
And so when there is like this mounting mutiny thing happening, it's tough because they kind of have to do it solely through Chakotay and Paris, which is not super representative of what the ship is at. So like what they're doing on the ship in theory is good. Like it's a good story, but I just don't think they have the room to really to flesh it out.
Yeah. The mutiny at the very end is the peak of that, I think, where he's just do what I say, and he's like, I'm not going to do what you said.
And then all he does, like, nobody does anything.
No, nobody does
anything. He just
anything.
goes, like, move away from that controller. He's like, all right. And then that's it. And he's got control of the ship again.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, I don't know. I think it's a really strange episode of the show because I like the bombast of it, I guess. Like it is pretty close to a Voyager movie, I think.
Yeah.
I like everything that happens to Voyager. I think it personally suffers from a two-parter not nearly feeling bad enough where it's, you have an hour and a half basically, and it's like day 100, it's like day 10 and everything's fine. Then like day 157 and everything's blown up, and it's just like, it's cutting a little bit too quickly through this year. Like the jumps are just kind of absurd.
The first timeline change, the timeline changes and they're under attack.
Yeah.
And it's like, why are they under attack? If what the hell are they called? The
Krenim. Krenim.
If the Krenim are now the power in this area, why is it any different than the way it is at the end when they're like, just go around us?
Yes.
What happens to cause Voyager to get into a gunfight with these people?
Yes. Yeah. That's the time angle part. I honestly, like, an interesting thing about the time angle is I did not remember that Annorax was doing this for his wife. I thought that he was just a scientist who had invented a weapon that was turning the Krenim from this like minor power into this major dominant force because of the changes he was making. I don't know if I would actually prefer that. Maybe it doesn't give the personal drive that you think you need to. But
yeah, I think you need to have the personal thing. What is strange though is the way they started out is it feels like one of my first notes was another civil war, because the way that you drop into this whole thing is there's a war between the Krenim and then the other guys.
Yeah.
And they even say like, all right, once we get rid of these people, we will be the power in this, in this quadrant or whatever.
Yeah.
And I don't know now why they needed to do that, because that doesn't have anything to do with his wife.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
Like, because his wife died because of a virus.
Yes.
As far as we know, was the weapon, the first time he used the weapon was not on these people, right? That you see at the beginning of the show.
No, it can't have been, right? Because they are in the timeline still at that point. Yeah.
So
must have been somebody else.
So like, I don't know if it's just part of the butterfly effect where he used the weapon, wiped these people out, which then caused the virus that killed 50 million people, which is a lot of people, by the way.
Yep.
It's a lot of people.
Yep.
And then he used it again, which put his people at war with these other people. I guess that's probably the line of causality here.
Yeah.
So then he has to eradicate the people, but like that's not super clear.
Yep.
So it just feels like he's using it in order to win this war.
Yeah.
Which is completely separate from his main objective.
Yeah.
So that stuff gets a little bit sticky.
Yeah.
Track that.
It's a... I don't know. It's a... Because you opened up by just comparing it to yesterday's Enterprise, and I think that it's a... I guess I'm having a hard time describing what the problem with the time travel thing is. But to me, if I could like restate it, it's that the incremental changes that he's making are these huge civilizational wipeouts that ultimately don't make things feel very different in the universe that they're in, because it's very abstracted. Like it's a lot of like them coming in and saying like, this species is gone now and this has happened, and he's like, oh shit, I didn't think that was going to happen. So it doesn't have, there's no change of uniform, there's no different attitude in this new universe, like, because Voyager exists not in the changing universe for whatever reason. And I think it's just, that's why I come back to my point of like, the weapon is just kind of a weapon, because it's not really an episode that wants to talk about or have a consistent view about what these timeline changes are doing for people. It's weird that Voyager is not changing with the timeline in some ways, because it's stuck in the bubble with the Krenim ship. And being in that bubble makes the story feel less galactically shifting than it is, because they're not seeing anything that's happening out there.
Yeah, I think that's tough, because how do you depict that across
you probably can't. Yeah,
one ship that's falling apart and another one that is stated to be outside of space-time, so the effects don't there are no effects. I think it's just one of those things where the theoretical futility of it is all they can really use. Yeah. Because there's nothing that they can keep cutting back to show change. And honestly, I don't really even know if that would really change it that much or improve it. Because the point is still just that he keeps chipping away at this block trying to fix the thing he broke, and that's not going to do it. And so they can wipe out as many civilizations or show you as many changes as you want, and it's just like, it's kind of superfluous at a certain extent, a certain point. Yeah, I think the one thing that they don't do in this, which I'm really surprised they don't do, is like, if you're going to reset everything, one of my favorite comic book series from the late 80s, early 90s was the Marvel What If series, which would be like, what if Iron Man was the Punisher or vice versa or something like that, which some silly change like that causes this totally different outlook or things play out totally differently. And the fun of that thing was that this was a complete pocket universe where nothing mattered, so everybody got killed all the time. Yeah. Like there's one where it's some X-Men story plays out differently, and they think Cable killed Professor X, and then the rest of the book is just Cable just killing everybody. Yeah. And in a show like this, nobody on the crew, like Tuvok goes blind. Yeah, like,
he gets blown up and he goes blind.
Yeah, I feel like at the end of this, it should just be Janeway or something. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like everybody should be getting killed. If this is, it's like
tell the doctor I'm going to be back with severe burns.
Yeah, like blinding Tuvok isn't really anything, and I mean, there's so many other people that, B'Elanna has that problem with her back that gets fixed relatively quickly. I don't know. I don't think that they did as much with that stuff as you could have. And what it really did for me, is highlighted one of the issues I think Mulgrew has with her Janeway performance. And I don't know if this is one of the things that is what people talk about when they talk about how schizophrenic she is, but I'm realizing anytime she tries to play strong and like headstrong and assertive and action Janeway, she sounds like an insane person.
No.
Like she goes from kindly Captain Janeway into I'm gonna blow the ship up and everybody on, and she just comes off like an insane person.
Yeah,
like for whatever the reason, the way that she's playing it, she like every single scene is really tense because like I keep thinking, has she lost her entire mind?
Janeway's kind of interesting to me in this one. She's obviously a foil to Annorax, right? That there's a sort of like obsession with her. Like her obsession is to get the crew home, so they're pairing it off against Annorax to compare and contrast or whatever. I think that this is a great example of schizophrenic Janeway because she has a point that I like. It was a scene that I was just kind of like, wow, I can't believe that this is happening. The scene where she refuses to obey the doctor's order to stand down, and she's like, what the fuck are you going to do about it? It's just weird on a show that it seems like Janeway to this point has been very much, we need to follow the chain of command, because if we don't, this whole journey is just going to fall apart. And I don't know if it's the time of it, right? Like, I don't know if there's enough time spent on the Year of Hell that gets you to a point where you go like, I kind of buy Janeway just telling the doctor to go fuck himself at this point. Like this is this has been building to this. And the reason I thought it was strange is because the doctor isn't proposing anything nuts. He's not doing something that is like, this can't be the way, like they have to fight back or they have to do something. Janeway really just kind of comes off as just saying like a crazy person. She's like, I'm not giving this up. She basically Donald Trumps it. She's like, I don't lose the election. Like I'm going to continue doing this, all the things I want to do.
Right.
And I don't think that I think that the larger point and the larger issue with me in this episode is that it feels a lot like an episode or a movie where you kind of have, these are the scenes that happen in this stuff. You're going to have Janeway yell at the doctor. You're going to have the ship collide with the other ship and reset the timeline. It just doesn't feel organic in a lot of ways. Chakotay's turn, I would say, is the other thing. Like this doesn't make a lot of sense to me that Chakotay's all in on this temporal thing. It kind of feels like the Voyager movie, and I don't think Nemesis hasn't come out before this, but like a lot of Nemesis is in this. Like the action spectacle of the Nemesis movie is kind of in this Voyager story. Mm-hmm. And I think that the reason I find it a little bit of a letdown is that the things that I would rather focus on, like Annorax and the crew falling apart and the ship falling apart, is kind of second fiddle to the action spectacle of like the dramatic scenes that have to happen in it.
Yeah.
And I don't think the dramatic scenes are built off of the stuff that happens before it, unfortunately. Like even the crew leaving the ship at the end of the first part, it's like, this feels kind of odd. Like I don't think that this feels the right way to separate the crew at this point. Why not all die together on Voyager? So things like that.
Well, for instance, I think the stuff that happens on Annorax's ship is backwards. I think they should have flipped Chakotay and Paris and had Paris be the one who was coming around to Annorax's idea. And I think what they should have done is in the first half, B'Elanna should get killed.
Sure.
B'Elanna gets killed, and then when Paris goes onto the ship, he now sees a way that he could get Voyager home, and then Chakotay could be like, clearly you're just doing this because B'Elanna is dead.
Right.
And you want to bring her back. And he's like, no, that's not, like that at least would motivate that stuff. And so it would motivate his change. He could change on a dime. It wouldn't matter because he's got that built thing in, leading him to that where he's like, oh, now I have this possible option. So it's just some stuff like that. Like I think the Janeway stuff, it's tough to, I think a lot of it is her performance, because I think anytime she bears down on the Janeway character, she just sounds insane.
Okay.
And so when you get to that point where the doctor is telling her to, trying to relieve her of command, and she's throwing it back at him, if that's the point where she is supposed to sound nuts, it doesn't sound any different than anything that she's done up to that point.
Yeah.
And so you're not really feeling like she's been pushed to the brink in a way that they probably want you to.
Yeah.
Short hair looks great though. I like the new hair.
This is her haircut from here on out, is the short hair.
Also, how did Tuvok and Seven get caught in that giant fireball, and the only thing that happened was he went blind?
It's very much,
I thought this was. Oh, go ahead.
No, it's very much just shades of the Dukat storyline at the end of DS9, where they're like, we can't have Dukat around. Let's just say he goes blind for 3 episodes and he comes back. Yeah.
But like, I thought they were going to start killing people off. Like, it made sense to me.
I had, when it happened, I was like, oh, I didn't remember the Tuvok dies in this, but he must die. And no, he's just blind.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I think as much as I hate it when you just needlessly kill people off, this is one of those stories where you can do that. And you should do that to really take advantage of what you're doing.
It would prime you for the reset too, right? Like if people start dying, you're 100%. Like, oh, they have to reset this. So this is fine. It is.
Yeah, or if like, you know, if in that final scene or whatever, Paris and or Chakotay get killed on the other ship or whatever during the mutiny, and then it's just Janeway left, or Janeway and probably Harry Kim for some reason. You know, then she flies the ship. It's a last resort, is flying the ship into the other ship, and just it's the only thing that there is left to do. Yeah. I think there's a lot of meat left on the bone on this one that they don't get into. And I do think this should have been like 3 or 4 episodes or something, because like it's tough. I guess I could go either way on that, because it's tough to do an entire year in 2 hours when you keep jumping forward and not really showing that much change ultimately. Yeah. Or you know, the change seems unbelievable, because like, while logically they've been doing this thing for 100 days, you're seeing like 30-second scenes of it, if that, and it's like, well, this is like happening very quickly to me. I would have stretched this out. I think you could do many episodes of this arc to like really settle into because one of the most effective things for me that I enjoyed watching the most was just the disintegration of Voyager, to watch like the Voyager fall apart. And it's like, this is it's kind of neat. And I think that this happens fairly quickly. Like Voyager goes to shit fairly quickly in this 2-parter. It's like it gets attacked and it's no longer the same ship. Like everything's blown up, and then it just gets progressively worse after that. But I really like, I don't know. I think that that would have enabled the stuff that I would actually want to see, because for this year of hell, it's probably fitting for Voyager. And maybe this is me just stumbling into another thing of like what I'm actually pinpointing about it. The year of hell is not a year of interpersonal hell, unfortunately. You know, and I know the show doesn't do that a lot, but it's like it's kind of tiresome or boring to just cut back to 100 days later. The ship is just in worse shape, and Janeway's like, my headache is killing me, doctor, give me the medicine. And then she does it. But like, you know, if this was done over 6 episodes, there's a real space here to have Chakotay and Janeway someone start disagreeing about what's going on here. And Voyager's not the show that's ever going to do that, but the reason I can't get into Voyager is because it seems like Voyager would rather do the action spectacle movie thing and sort of skip over what these characters might argue about. Like I actually liked, I think the most effective pairing in this is Seven and Tuvok, because I think they actually learn something from each other. Yeah. And for a thing called A Year of Hell, I was expecting a lot more of the characters learning stuff about each other. Even if it gets reset and they don't remember it, someone should be having a conversation with somebody. Well, the thing I thought was really funny was when the doctor was being shitty to everybody. And then Chakotay's like, you're being shitty to everybody. And he's like, I'm sorry. Last week, when we had to shut that thing down, I watched 2 crew members die because I had to shut the door on them. And Chakotay's like, yeah. All right. Well, that's a hell of a thing. It didn't really amount to anything. It doesn't land the way that it should. Yeah. Like it's all good stuff. Like all the stuff they're doing, this is really good stuff. Yeah. I like watching the doctor watch those people. And then he's like, I have to shut the door now. Yeah. But it's just missing a few little nips and tucks to really make the thing sing better. Which part did you like better? I I actually think I like the second part better.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, we strong disagree. But go. Yeah, why'd you like the second part better?
I think because there was more Kurtwood Smith, and you kind of got into his headspace a bit more, and he was, like I think it's tough because I didn't love the Voyager stuff in the second half, but I really liked the stuff that they were doing with him. I thought whether or not it was underwritten, I thought it was very effective because of him. Except, and I've been ringing this bell for 9 years now. This is why at the end, Janeway, her whole fleet's flying in. Janeway, this is why you don't fly the ship so close together.
Because when one of them gets hit,
he goes, and smashes into yours. You're in space. It's infinite.
I know.
Why are you 25 feet away from each other?
This was an egregious example. That ship had no business being so close to Voyager that one torpedo would just like knock it into Voyager. Unless
it was supposed to be the thing where they were no, because I thought the one caveat or the one reason I was gonna give it a pass was because I thought maybe it was so they could be inside the temporal shield or something.
Oh no!
But those other two went flying away from it, so they didn't care.
Yeah. Also,
don't fly the ships so close together, guys.
Terrible armada from Janeway. Where if I was those aliens that got blasted into nothing, I'd be pretty pissed about the way the things have turned out here. Where Janeway and Voyager just hangs back and those two ships go in for the attack, and then
I want to know
shock troops out of there.
I want to see how she made the appeal to them.
Yeah.
Because once she gets set on fire, she doesn't change her clothes for the rest of the thing, and she looks insane. And she's like, I need your ships to help.
Well, it's
trust me. There's someone who has a temporal weapon who's wiping people out of existence.
But that's kind of this is a very minor, just like plot detail thing. But like, if the crew of this ship has been doing this for hundreds of years, everyone in that area must know.
Well, technically, they wouldn't know anything because every time they use it just wipes everybody off
Well, so I guess that means that there's like the instability in that region of space is fairly remarkable. I guess it would have to be like how I guess you'd have to wonder how far the butterfly goes. Like, does the impact spread anywhere? When did the real timeline stop?
As he explains to Chakotay, when Chakotay tries to remove that meteor from existence.
Yes, it's terrible.
That butterfly effect is quite large.
Yeah.
So the implication there is that their calculations are a lot more refined, and so they have a better handle on that. But even it doesn't seem like they have that much better handle on it. But
yeah, I would argue annihilating an entire spacefaring culture probably has a bigger impact than the comet that seeded things. Yeah. Maybe I don't know. It's one of those things.
It's such a strange conceit to begin with, right? Because every time they do one of these things, the guy's like, we've calculated that by wiping these people out of existence, there'll be a 52 will be back to 52% of the timeline we want.
The original, yeah.
And I don't understand how, if every change you're making is
removing something,
how you could ever possibly get back to 100%.
Yeah.
If all you're doing is removing things from existence.
Yeah.
Because like he explains, he used it the first time, which removed these people, which caused a virus, which killed everybody. And so right there, it's disproving your hypothesis.
Yeah. It's a weird weapon.
The other time travel thing that I wanted to ask about, because it seemed wrong, was when they're doing the thing about the trivia, and Torres doesn't know the name of the ship. Is that from Cochrane's ship?
Oh yeah.
And then Seven knows it, and she says, "The Borg were there for those events. Don't worry about it. It's a long story."
Yeah.
That's not technically true, right? Because by the laws of time travel, the Borg who went back in time were destroyed, including the Queen, And so the Borg should have no record of that.
The Enterprise Borg. But that's after that. So no, in the context of Voyager, it doesn't make any sense, right? Because they're assuming that there were no survivors from that situation. Correct.
Right.
So the Borg shouldn't know about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was my first instance that this time travel stuff was not going to make any sense.
This is all nonsense. I wonder if Enterprise retroactively fixes that. Because do the Borg and Enterprise get destroyed? But they send a message. You'd have to make some real jumps of logic of saying that they sent a message that said, we survived. I guess you could assume that. And then the Borg would know. But whatever.
Unless you want to say that the part of the ripple effect is now that for whatever reason, because they wiped that one species off the Earth, that the Borg... No, because that wouldn't make any sense. Because if the Borg were there and they won, then Starfleet wouldn't exist.
Wouldn't exist, yeah.
Yeah. Who knows?
Well, I'm a little annoyed. I don't think I've done a great job of explaining why I'm sort of lukewarm on this episode. I liked it as I was watching it. I think it's a... To me, it's not much different from a lot of other Voyager in that I don't walk away from this feeling affected in a way that I would say like the great Star Trek episodes do. Like a lot of the great ones, you walk away and you go like, wow, that was really... It's a hell of an adventure those guys went on. Or it's like you feel bad for a character, or there's like a little bit of like sorrow in the story, or it's like what could have been, or you think about it a little bit. This, I don't think I'm going to have a memory of this, really. Like there's no emotional memory to anything that happens in this episode. And I feel that it's something that they seem to be wanting to do, because I feel very similar to the Scorpion two-parter, right? Like that was a lot of bombast, but I don't really have an emotional memory of anything that happened in that episode. You know, like I remember the Borg ships flying by Voyager to go attack the species 8472 ship, and that's like the visual thing. But I mean, unless you think that the Annorax story is the thing, like, did you connect with the Annorax story enough to think that he's like, it's a, kind of like an all-time episode maker from that, and I just don't like it enough?
I think it's definitely on the better side of Voyager. I don't know if I would say it's an all-timer in all of Star Trek.
I think he's a great villain. I think I think he would go on not a Mount Rushmore, but he goes on if you're writing some little blog post about like the great villains of Star Trek, I think Annorax is one of them.
I think so too, because I think he's Star Trek is at this point in time does go to the action well, and they always just keep trying to recreate Khan or the Klingons or the Borg, which always ends up being bang, bang, shoot 'em ups and people looking for revenge and shit.
Yeah.
And Annorax is just such a subdued performance, and he's not a bad guy. Like obviously he is in the larger sense, but he's not like someone who's looking to take over the galaxy or something. Like he's not the Changelings, and he's not the Jem'Hadar, and he's not the Klingons. He's doing something for a very personal reason, but he's doing it. He's the first like scientist villain that we've seen in a long time. I feel like a lot of the villains on this show have ended up being army guys or
warriors. Yeah,
warriors. And so to see someone like him who is doing what he's doing based on numbers, basically, driven by a personal broken thing inside him, is pretty novel for this show.
Yeah,
but I agree with you that I think it doesn't land the way that it should overall, the whole two-parter. And I think a big part of it is the fact that they reset everything. Because what makes yesterday's Enterprise really impactful is that Guinan remembers everything, right?
Yeah.
Like someone comes back having been changed or affected by the events of the episode. An episode like this would be a perfect example, should be a perfect example of like what they would do on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Check that off your bingo card, everybody. Where the big like high concept episodes would tend to include big story and or character stuff for the show that sticks, right? So for instance, the musical episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer isn't just a musical for musical's sake and then everything goes back to normal and they're like, that was weird. It's the episode where all of Buffy's friends find out that when they brought her back to life, they ripped her out of heaven, which is why she's now depressed.
Right.
It's like, it's a big moment that gets tucked into these high concept shows. And if you had this two-parter where at the end of it, things get reset, but everybody remembers what happened, you could use that as an excuse to really push some characters forward. Like if B'Elanna gets killed and Paris then has this breakdown where he almost, blah, 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 when everything gets reset, he now has a different understanding of what that relationship is.
Yeah.
The same with the Doctor, the same with Chakotay. Everybody changes a bit and remembers that, and then that informs their character moving on. That would have been great. Like I think that would be the thing that would really kick this up into the high end for me.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't remember was it called Before and After? The episode where Kes originally describes this concept that this is going to happen, like this bad stuff is coming. I feel like that did a better job of having a character live with the situation that they went through.
Yes,
and it's like there's kind of like fear of that. Also, bizarre that no one recognizes the Krenim at this and goes, "Isn't this the guys that Kes was talking about?" And isn't this starting to start?
I mean, it's one of those things where it's like we never see them in that episode. Who knows if Kes even knows who they are? Like, I think it's
right. Yeah, Kes sees them. Right, it's the Kes's fantasy world. She sees the Krenim in her thing. Yeah, but she obviously
does see them.
Yeah, they see a ship. They get attacked by a ship.
Oh, they do. Okay,
yeah.
Is it the same ship?
I don't remember. Probably not. Yeah. I would assume not.
Yeah, whatever. Doesn't matter.
But she described it, but apparently no one listened to it. Unfortunately, she exploded and is no longer on the show. Yeah, I thought that episode, I would agree with you. Because I think that something like DS9's Visitor episode, there's not even a strong like textual idea that Sisko remembers, except at the very end of it when he gets out of his situation and he stops the thing that was going to cause him to die in the first place or phase out of existence, and he lands on the floor holding Jake, and he looks at him, and it's just enough to know that like Sisko remembers everything that happened in the Visitor. Like he went through that experience and it like opened doors for him. And here, I will say that this is harder to do. It's harder to have these changes sit and last with you. I guess my argument would be, if you must use the reset button, you have to hit this stuff hard during the sequences that are about to get reset. Like the characters have to have a lot of conversations and like open up with each other about things and like make realizations that when it gets reset, you kind of understand this alternate timeline that they've failed to live through, and that like this is a possibility. It just didn't happen. And I just think it makes it for more engaging drama to have that stuff in the episode. You know?
Yeah, like imagine if the story of Paris and Chakotay on that ship ends with them getting into a fight and one of them stabbing the other one. Over whether or not they should stop this thing from happening, and then things get reset and they're like, so anyway,
not gonna turn my back on you, Tom.
Yeah, like things should get reset, and then instead of everybody being like smiling about their new whatever, it should be everybody just sitting there like with this blank terror expression on their face.
Yeah.
And just like looking at each other and going like, I don't think, maybe we should all just go to bed.
Let's all have Neelix's ration soup and call it a day. All right, we'll go to patron thoughts then, unless you have anything else specifically you want to say about this. But we've been talking for a while. Thanks, everybody, for supporting us and listening to the show. You can support the show at patreon.com/thepenskyfile, where where you can leave thoughts on upcoming episodes, and we read them on the podcast.
My favorite line from the episode, the first episode, was when they first bring up time travel and Janeway says, "I've made it my goal in life to avoid time travel."
Yeah.
It's like that had to have been a joke made on purpose.
Getting pretty meta. She's gone through her own time travel stuff at this point.
Multiple times, yeah.
Yeah. So this is Kyle Barrett with Year of Hell.
All right, give me 1 second here. Year of Hell. Thank God 7 is here to teach the crew about a brand new technology never before used for navigation, maps.
Mm-hmm.
This is the classic episode. Everyone
map.
Points to very detailed.
Very detailed.
This is the classic episode. The blue, of course, is land. This is the classic episode everyone points to and says, "Look at what this show could have been." It's true that the escalated drama is engaging, but because it only lasts 2 episodes and everything is reset at the end, I never get the sense this is actually happening to the characters we know, and rather this is just a cool alt-reality story not worth getting invested in, akin to Enterprise's Mirror Universe episodes, and nothing more. If you want this story... If you want the story actually committed to, then watch Battlestar Galactica. Kurtwood Smith is wonderful, one of Voyager's best guest stars, and just imagine getting trapped in a turbo lift with Harry Kim. Hell indeed. 4 out of 5. Also, you're telling me that B'Elanna Torres knows classic MGM musical, but she doesn't know the name of Zephyr Cochrane's ship? I don't believe that for a second.
Their trivia,
whatever that movie was, I don't remember.
Their trivia was a little absurd. I would agree. Taxel Bear says, Year of Hell, it's a bit cheap, but declaring that your ship simply exists outside the realms that you are affecting is a neat way to get around various time paradoxes. The Year of Hell probably should have been an entire season, and one that Janeway could have avoided by simply turning back when they were still at the border of Krenim space. That said, the conversations between the Krenim captain and his number 1, as well as other characters, are pretty good Star Trek stuff. Incel Who Needs His Pants On says, Year of Hell, I've fallen asleep to these 2 episodes more times than any other. That doesn't mean it's bad. It means I keep putting them back on again. It's a lot like watching The Aquatic Zindi. 4 out of 5. This is Artorius with Year of Hell. Excuse me, and I'll send it to you while I die coughing.
Year of Hell. The ship is badly damaged. The doctor has to deal with balancing dehumanization with the needs of the many. 7 of 9 learns to be more assertive as an individual while forming a bond with Tuvok, who has to deal with blindness. The crew went through a harrowing time together, bonding over the experience, and we even saw an amazing portrayal of time, viewing, and alteration. Yet it was all meaningless. If only the producers had the balls to keep the experience instead of washing it all down the toilet. This is why I hate time travel as concept used in such a fashion. It's a lazy way for writers to have ideas but then dismiss them without consequence. This whole 2-parter was meaningless in the grand scheme of things and would have been better to never have existed in history with such an ending. 3 erased possibilities out of 5. Jeez, tell us what you really think.
Yarpy says, Year of Hell, the best 2 episodes of Voyager, but I wish they could stretch it for at least 4 to 5 episodes. Not hit the almighty reset button in the end. Kurtwood Smith is great as always, and the regulars get to stretch their wings more than usual. 5, Kurtwood Smith steals all the scenes out of 5.
That guy really doesn't get enough credit for being as good an actor as he is.
Yeah, he's good.
Yeah, he's got a lot of range.
He does. I think there's the it's neat to see very clear examples of great actors being paired with not great actors to see like what the difference is in how great acting is done. I think he's a good example.
It's called the Katie Holmes in Batman Begins effect. Anytime when you watch that movie, anytime that she shares a scene with Christian Bale, it's like 2 completely different movies.
I think Kurtwood in his number 1 are a good example in this one. Great actors just... It sounds kind of obvious, but like great actors don't just say the line. You know, it's right. Like there's a sense that like when they say it, they're like, what does this mean? And how would my character say this?
Yeah.
And I think that they're a good example because I think that his number 1 actor is not a bad Star Trek actor, but there's never any nuance to his line reading. You're never like, oh, this guy's like really considering something. He says what he's thinking, and he just moves on to the next thing. The Annorax character has a lot of consideration behind what he says, and I think it fits it well.
I can't remember if I mentioned this on the Virtuosity podcast, but I had recently seen The Equalizer 3, the Denzel Washington movie, and the script for that movie is trash. Like, the dialogue in that movie is awful, and it's got tons of cliche stuff in it.
Sorry, which?
But
movie
I realized
The
Equalizer 3.
Oh, Equalizer 3. Okay.
And but I realized I was watching it going like, man, Denzel is like really putting his back into this terrible dialogue. Like there was one that stood out to me where he's got some guy tied to a stake about to like light him on fire or some shit. And the guy's like, no, it's not this. You're going to kill me. And then the line Denzel says is, death comes for all of us, which is a really cliche action movie line.
Yeah.
But the way that he says it, it's like you're watching him consider what those words mean. And I was like, I don't know, man. I hope he enjoys doing these movies, because he is giving these things a lot more than they deserve.
It elevates it.
Yeah.
It's not a long list of great guest appearances in Star Trek either, I don't think. Like great, really standout performances. I would say Annorax is one. Harris Yulin in Duet is one.
Yep.
Who's a great TNG guest appearance?
Jellicoe? Ronnie
Yeah,
Cox?
that's a good one. Yeah, Jellicoe's a great guest actor.
I was going to say, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I feel like the stories end up being more memorable than a lot of the guest stars. And so you'll get a guest star who's like a decent to above average actor, but the story ends up being the thing that gets elevated. You know what I mean? It is the elevating factor. Sure. So you do get these episodes like this one or Harris Yulin or Ronnie Cox, where it is the great performance of the actor, but a lot of the other ones tend to be like, Christopher McDonald, memorable guest star, but that's not what people remember about yesterday's Enterprise,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. It is a short list. Obviously, the great episodes of Star Trek are kind of rare too, but it's a short list. Bob Kester says, Year of Hell. Did I have something I wanted to say? What was the comment you just read? No, maybe not. Bob J. Kester says, I remain astounded that they went to the trouble of setting up the Krenim in Before and After, and now start them all over again, a la TNG pretending the Borg hadn't been set up in the neutral zone. Did they have trouble motivating the ship there when the Kess had warned them away? How about they deliberately avoid Krenim space, and then there's an incursion, and pop, now they're inside Krenim space. Fixed it for you. 3 cool moments despite compound plot amnesia out of 5.
That is weird. I don't remember them specifically calling them out by name in the Before and After, but
the Krenim, yeah.
If that's what they do, that's strange that they just completely forgot about it.
Yeah. Weird time travel thing in an otherwise great scene. This is an episode. The scene where Annorax is having dinner with Chakotay in Paris. He's like, Tom, you're gluttonously eating the last deviled egg that ever came from Shahandra 2. Why does their food still exist if they've been erased?
Well, if it's been on that ship, it shouldn't matter.
So he goes down and he picks up a tray of,
I guess,
knishes and then comes back and
maybe they just have a good cookbook. I don't know.
Because he treats them as if they were the original thing. He's not replicating this. He's like, this is the original food.
Speaking of replicating, I am 100% on Janeway's side when it comes to that pocket watch. When Chakotay gives her that pocket watch and she's like, recycle this, we need the energy. And he's like, well, I made it for your birthday. When he says, I replicated this weeks ago, it's like, dude, that means you can do it again after we get out of this situation.
Just wait for the reset. I thought it was poor timing to be giving her the watch. And the Chakotay thing is like this, this like use like internet. He's like a beta male story. Like it always seems like Chakotay is trying to get in her pants, but it has like no game at all about it. He's like, I made you a watch. Would you like to have my watch? It's a continuing storyline that I don't really understand what they're doing with it. Justice for Toonshoe. I'll send this one to you, Shoe. Justice for Toonshoe with a Year of Hell.
In my humble opinion, this is the most overrated episode of Trek, maybe second only to In the Pale Moonlight. It's personally a big head scratcher that this one is almost always ranked near the top of lists for Voyager's all-time best. I get that Voyager admittedly has some real stinkers in the early going, but that doesn't make this one a classic. I fell asleep multiple times trying to watch both parts, and the only thing I can recall was Kurtwood Smith being a big bad. 2 alien invaders out of 5.
Changeling says, Year of Hell, bitches leave. Looking at this episode in isolation, it was great. Everyone is on their A game, and Kurtwood Smith proves to be one of my favorite character actors, and I would preferred him as a season-long villain who was than whoever the Kazon guy was. The reset button at the end kind of sours it a little bit for me. It is okay that everyone's physical injuries are erased, but the memories too deflates the drama of this two-parter. 5 dumbasses or double dumbasses if you're Kirk out of 5. Matt Russ says, Year of Hell, one of the best of Voyager, if not of Trek, with time travel shenanigans that are fun, like watching how the weakling Krenim become one of the super deluxe versions was cool. The Krenim Kess warned of seemed to be forgotten. Watching the ship fall apart should have been throughout the series from day one. Again, Chakotay quickly compromises his morals. At the end, does the reset of everything actually mean that they're going to do this all over again in a big loop, or is it implied that Annorax is getting some wifely love and doesn't follow on with his time travel device? The time's up line, perfect. 5 stray pieces of hair out of 5.
I will say the thing that doesn't really track, well, I guess it depends on how you want to look at it. If you look at that final scene as him choosing to go hang out with his wife means he's going to completely abandon everything he's doing, then it's fine. But he says that they've been doing this for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
So, like, Voyager getting back to normal and him hanging out with his wife are not occurring at the same time, you know?
Oh, you're right. So, it's like, is he further back in the timeline, or is there some sort of discrepancy here? Because you mean when Voyager gets out there, they've already been doing this since the start of Voyager's voyage. The ship has been...
Because he mentions that they've been using this weapon trying to fix the timeline for hundreds of years. So I guess I assume that when he goes to hang out with his wife, he just abandons all of his research he was doing.
The thing about the hundreds of years is it ties into the mutiny problem. I just feel that the crew should have a better mutiny argument against him. Be like, Kurtwood, Annorax, this is not working. Like, this is clearly not working. And I kind of want to go home to see my family who was not on the colony that you destroyed with that virus. I don't know, but you don't get any sense of that. Unless
it might be like a more of a Groundhog Day, hundreds of years thing, since they exist outside of space-time, they...
You think they don't sense the time is passing?
Yeah. Like they have experienced 100 years worth of existence.
Yeah.
But the actual outside universe has not, I don't know. Who cares? Yeah. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. They don't say that the entire Krenim race is, no, because they're out there in the warships. So they can't, like, isn't the solution to keep the crew going that they have wiped out their species outside of their ship was in the time thing, so they weren't affected, but they wiped out their race to this point, you know?
Probably, yeah.
And they're trying to get them back. That would give them more motivation, I think, if they were all... Yeah. This is Royo. But then at that point, Voyager runs into the problem of they can't be attacked. You know, they need like the Krenim to be attacking them the whole time, so they have to exist outside of that.
Right.
This is Royo with the Year of Hell.
The closest you will get to a Voyager movie borrowing Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Seas and Greek tragedies to create an epic. I hear all the time, Everyone wanted this stretched out to an entire season, but I remember the Zindi arc and it didn't even have enough material for half a season. It got stretched out into oblivion with filler and stupid crap like Carpenter Street. And that, speaking of which, today, as we're recording this, John Carpenter's birthday.
Oh, there you go.
And that Cowboy Planet, it completely killed the pacing and tone of that arc. People constantly harp on Janeway for sailing into Krenim space, despite being warned not to. But unique to this story, the time incursions appear to be unable to move objects, so it appears Voyager would be inevitably trapped in Krenim space if the borders shifted after a temporal incursion. Okay, I guess that explains my question. Sure, whatever. What I think helps make this two-parter a Voyager unique classic is that the stakes are both high and low at the same time. The survival of the galaxy or the fate of the Federation isn't at stake due to Voyager being just one ship, and how big the Krenim Empire is immaterial to us. So it lets the characters take center stage in this drama. If people ask what makes a Voyager episode stand out against the rest of the franchise, point them here, 5 out of 5.
Point Extra G says, Year of Hell, this is a really fun look at when things could have been like for Voyager, both the series and the ship. Seeing the ship become slowly more and more damaged over the story is a really great visual. Of course, as soon as you realize that there are time shenanigans afoot, you know that the whole story is headed to a reset button. But I still love seeing the crew push to extremes that they never go to otherwise. Jaron Hatch says, despite its timeless reputation, there are a few nagging flaws with this one. The ending is too convenient. Chakotay's characterization is weak. It's not especially profound, and it's a frustrating microcosm of everything the series could have been. That said, none of that detracts from an otherwise stellar episode of not just Voyager, but Star Trek. There's a lot to like here, but in my book, it's Kate Mulgrew's Captain Janeway that brings it all together. This is the episode that made me fall in love with her, both as a performer and a character, and it's her finest hour on the show. Easily the strongest episode of the series so far, and one of the all-time franchise greats. 5 elixirs of endurance out of 5. I'll read this.
That's another scene, right? Like you've got that scene where everybody's around the table drinking, shit juice.
Yeah.
Like there should be what they should have done. They should have had 2 of those scenes. One of them where everybody's there, and then another one later on in the Year of Hell where there's like 4 people missing or something.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like to really show what has happened.
Yeah, you could keep returning to that sequence of them eating together, and it's just getting worse and worse. Yeah. JC Superstar says, Year of Hell, what everyone else said. Also, I do wonder by what process Red Foreman determines which civilizations must be destroyed to restore his timeline. What science can compute this? What intriguing allusions, too, to 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, shout out to Royo and Moby Dick. All good artists steal, and then they make what they steal original. The scene with Tuvok and Janeway is very strong and effective. Would Spock have manually grazed Jim's shoulder in a spontaneous expression of deep affection? Maybe, but he wasn't half human. How the balls did Janeway get allies? Who are they? What a real joy. 5 out of 5. You certainly meeting new allies is something you would have an episode focused on, and if you stretched out the story. Let me see here. 15. I'll do this one. You can do the last one. Grappler John Zorn says, Year of Hell, no comments, only questions. Is this episode actually good, or is it just the closest we're going to get to the series' original premise? Is this good science fiction, or is it good Star Trek? Is it both or neither? What does it say about a show when one of its best episodes is the show's antithesis? Only questions. And then here's your last one. This is from Hat. I've agreed with a few of the patrons here. Sometimes I don't agree with the patrons quite a bit, but I think my overall score might change from some of the patrons, but I think everyone's kind of on the same page with the problems of it, at least that I share with them anyway.
Year of Hell. It takes far too long for Chakotay to get on board with Tom to confront the genocidal Annorax. Also, wouldn't enemy ships that shoot temporal missiles also have temporal shielding that would protect them from Annorax's weapons? Further, did Tuvok really take a nuclear warhead explosion to the face and live? Perhaps a rewrite of the script and also a part 3 that allowed us to see Janeway making alliances with aliens, possibly working out a solution that didn't require a reset switch, could elevate this higher. Due to the clear increase in budget as well as excellent performances from the cast, this episode has a very premium feel to it that I think inflates fan ratings of the episode higher than it deserves. 4 out of 5 for first watch, 3 out of 5 on rewatch. Yeah, I think Janeway going to recruit other aliens, like, I don't really give a shit about that. Like, I don't know. If you extended this out, yeah, that would probably be an episode, but I'm not dying to see that episode, you know?
Well, I mean, what's so curious about it is what did those aliens bring to this at all? They didn't do anything.
Right.
They got shot with the gun and disappeared. And that was like, you don't even need them in this. So
they needed them for the episode. See, okay, here's an interesting example of what the issue is, right? They need them there, A, to make Voyager look formidable against the ship, but also to have cannon fodder for the fight, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you got everybody on the ship, you start killing off crew members, that's does
enough.
the same thing, you know? You don't need a bunch of random faceless ships to blow up when you've got Harry Kim to blow up.
Speaking of faceless ships. Thanks, patrons, for leaving your thoughts about Year of Hell Part 1 and 2.
Oh, you know what they should have? Oh, man. They should have, one of the other blasts of the temporal gun should have caused Seven to turn back into a Borg, and then they all had to kill her. Or like she goes on a rampage and just starts tearing people up.
She should just, she turns into like an iPod or something like that. It's just a primitive form of technology. The minor little thing that kind of irritated me every time it happened. Annorax never pushes back on everyone calling his ship a weapon ship, which felt weird, I guess. I thought I know what you mean. He seems like the kind of character who would go, this ship is not a weapon. This ship is
exactly,
like,
Because he's a scientist.
Yeah.
It's a high science. It's working with mercury. It's an art form. He's an artist.
He's a scientist who made an enormous gun that will kill you all. Thanks, patrons. I think the patrons give this an average of a 4, I'm going to say. A couple 3s mixed in there. I think 1, 2, but then a lot of 5s and 4s. So we'll go with a 4 for the patrons. Clay, on a scale of 1 to 5, what are you going to give Year of Hell?
I'm going to give it a 4. I think it's one of the better ones we've seen, especially. Well, actually, this season's been decent so far. But,
yeah, it's been a decent season.
I do think it is a step up in a lot of areas, but I do think there's a lot hindering it from really getting into the all-timer club.
I'm going to give it a very weak 4. It is okay. It is watchable. I take hats, Garoppolo, John Zorn, and someone else who gave it a 5, might be Jaron Hatch. I agree with all of their criticisms of it. I think it actually knocks it down a little bit for me too. To Garoppolo's question, I'm actually like I do sort of wonder whether or not I'm like, is this good, or is this just like, is this a very watchable episode, or is this good? You know, I think there's a difference between them. I find this episode very watchable. I'm less convinced it's I'm not convinced it's a great episode, but I'm also not convinced it's a particularly good episode, but it's super watchable, and it has kind of a like energy that carries you through. And I think sometimes that's enough, but to get on my all-timer list, it's usually episodes that have a little bit more going on in them than that. But it's a terrific Annorax performance from Kurtwood Smith. The concept is fun. I like the idea of what this is, and it was a watchable episode. I'll give it a 4. It's a very weak 4.
Yeah, I think it's more than the sum of its parts ultimately.
Yeah.
Where, you know, it's being held together and elevated by different elements that, you know, it's not totally across the board. Yeah.
You liked it better than the Scorpion 2-parter? I think I liked it better than Scorpion.
Yeah, I think so. I think I did.
That's it. Thanks everybody for listening to the show. That's Year of Hell. We're going to be back with the very next episode, which is something I'm going to scroll up to. Random thoughts. So appropriate. Apropos. Clay, do you have anything you want to say before we get out of here?
Check out Rotten Horror Picture Show. We are doing Halloween on Patreon this year, the entire Halloween series. Well, 12 of the 13, except for Halloween 2018, which we did on our normal feed show a couple years ago. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's going to be interesting.
H2O. When did H2O come out? What
H2O is 98. That was the 20th anniversary. It's going to be interesting.
That makes sense.
Because otherwise the title makes zero sense.
Makes no sense.
Because that was the 7th movie, and it has nothing to do with water. Okay. So H2O is
just an
odd title. But yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into that series because we've recorded the first one, which should probably be out by the time this comes out, and the thing that makes it unique among the slasher series of the 80s is that, well, it made it past the 80s, and it has the biggest gap between movies, whereas Friday the 13th, they did 8 of them in 9 years, I think.
Yeah.
And Nightmare on Elm Street, they did pretty much like one a year for like 8 years or so. Halloween took a lot of time off. So there was like 3 years between the first 2, and then they did a couple in a row, and then they took a few years off and then did a couple in a row. And then, so it's an interesting series.
There's a little bit more time to change in between its iterations, I guess.
I would argue too much time to think.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
Because I think this series has a tendency to overthink itself because the first one was so good.
You can check that out. And I think me and you covered the original on Patreon way back when. So you
Years
can check
ago,
that one out too as a teaser.
See if my opinions have changed.
Yeah, you can see behind the curtains about how podcasts are just stream of consciousness talking. You don't actually have real thoughts about anything.
No.
I guess I'd be interested to hear what we were talking about back then because it must have been 6 or 7 years ago, probably.
Probably, yeah.
That's it. Thanks, everybody, for supporting the show. Patreon.com/The Pensky File. The whole bunch of stuff. We covered the Police, ranked all their albums. That's up there. That got good feedback, so that was nice. So thanks, everybody who listened to that.
Do you know what you're going to do for the next one of that?
I'm still thinking. I think I have to come up. I think I'm going to put a decade poll to narrow it down to a decade, and then I'll see if I want to do another poll or just pick something from that.
Sure.
So thanks, everybody. So check out the poll. It'll be before the end of the month, so I know what I'm doing next month. That'll be on Patreon. That's it. We're done. Year of Hell, over and done with. Random Thoughts is next week. See ya.